Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Erika Ishii. We are here live at IndieCade, a celebration of independent games. I would like to remind everybody that we are doing a giveaway. If you go to twitch.skybound.com, you can fill out a survey there and give us feedback about the games that you've been watching here and enter to win really cool stuff. So I'm here with Tracy Fullerton, who is the developer behind Walden. Everybody else, would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Todd Martens. I write about video games for the LA Times.
I'm Brian. Hey.
Brian A. Is that
Brian
to
A. That's
protect
my
your
full
identity?
name. No, Brian Mitchell is the full name.
Oh. Okay, have we compromised your identity?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
maybe. There's a lot
Forgive
of
me for that.
information out there.
So Tracy, please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your game.
Right, so I'm an experimental game designer and educator, and Walden is a game that I've been working on for a really long time, 7 years in fact, and it's the story of Henry David Thoreau, the American writer, who went down to the woods near Walden Pond and built a small shelter and lived there, lived off the land. Trying to find out, how could we balance our sort of most basic needs of survival with the quest to find inspiration in nature and in a well-lived life.
Awesome. We can definitely get started here.
Totally. We're going to do a new game.
7 years.
Well, I have a lot of other things I do too, so this has been a labor of love and very small team. It's a large open world game. There's you can play the entire woods of Walden. There's 6 hours of content, and we have a team of about 5 people at the core. We have students as well, but a core team of 5 people. So.
Tracy, I'm curious that right now in gaming, like narrative games are doing sort of really well. You walk around IndieCade, there's so many narrative-based games. And this coming from a text most of us know or read at some point. But your game, it's very exploratory. It's not just like a text-based click-through sort of game.
Right.
And so just talk about the decision to sort of use the text in like a more free-form sort of way.
It's a funny thing. If you go back and read Thoreau, he doesn't have a real quote-unquote narrative. It's structured around the first year that he spent at the pond, but his writing is super procedural. It's like little chunks of ideas, and the more I looked at it, the more I was like, well, you could kind of take it back apart and allow the player to put it back together in their own order of how they explore Walden, and it actually doesn't lose anything by making it personalizable for the player that way. It actually gains something because it becomes your story of Walden. So,
sure.
I mean, it is a narrative in the sense that you do play through the year, and so things unveil. There are quest lines that sort of bring you into contact with other people like Emerson, or you could work with Bronson Alcott helping people on the Underground Railroad, stuff like that. There are kind of narrative lines, but you're right, the base of the game is super sort of procedural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible to sort of ignore sort of like Walden's.
Exactly. So now Brian has been working on his house, and he actually fainted because he just went right to work like a good, Puritan there. Oh,
Well, there's a lot of arrowheads
actually,
around now.
looks like we got an old build here, and you got one of our fun, lovely bugs. So I should just say that you'll never get that many prizes if you quote unquote play the game for real. Yeah. So if Brian, for example, opens up the journal, you can see the full spectrum of Walden that he can explore. Right now, you're just that little tiny arrow up there in the corner.
No, come back, journal.
And there's a lot of different secrets to be found in the woods. And by finding those things, you will regain your inspiration, which you've lost. It's kind of gray. The world is kind of gray right now. Oh, yeah, it's sad. It's sad. But if you, say, took a walk down by the pond and found some of the animals, or say, yes, of course, read some of the inspirational texts that are right there.
The reading rock.
Yeah, so if you, say, check out this book, which was one of Thoreau's favorites, it's part of the Iliad. By spending time with this book and some of the others that you find scattered through the woods, you actually gain inspiration. And that inspiration actually is what unlocks those rewards that you've been given by mistake in this bug. So yeah.
I'm just walking.
Yeah, just walking, just having a good time. And you know, a lot of that is sort of at the heart of the game, is just exploring, right? Just enjoying Walden. And there's many small beauties to be discovered if you look close enough at the woods.
There's a duck.
There's a duck. It's a mother duck, and it has some. She's got some little ducklings with her, actually.
It's nice.
Yeah.
What's the balance between sort of making the player feel like Thoreau, or really trying to make the player sort of just be whoever he or she is?
Well, I mean, ostensibly, you do play Thoreau. You are in Thoreau's footsteps. It's Thoreau's hands that you see. It's Thoreau's words that you hear. But you don't have to act like Thoreau. So just as an example, if you wanted to, Brian, you could go to town and get a job and live in town in your parents' house, and you could be slacker Thoreau, right? And you don't have to actually play Thoreau's version of Walden. You will get an entirely different experience. You'll get, you're going to fill your journal with ideas about town and not with ideas about the woods. But you know, it's a completely valid experience, and we wanted to leave that in there. In fact, not in this build, but in the more current builds, there's a whole quest line where you can essentially become a famous writer, which he did. But if you focus on it, you can spend your time writing articles, sending them to New York, and then finally you get invited to lecture, and you can get a lot of money for his day, a lot of money, like $50. Sure. And you can use that to buy fancy clothes and buff up your house. And this is an entirely valid way to play the game, but you're going to get some critical comments back. You're going to see some of Thoreau's comments on ways to live that might give you the pause on how you chose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why Walden?
Yeah. So my dad's family is from New England, from this area, and we spent summers there. And you know, I just had a love of. My dad would always make us read the books that you know, of all the writers, New England writers, and so I had sort of a deep love of the material from when I was a kid, and just wanted to use a game as a way of allowing people who could never go there, and like I did, I floated in a boat on not this pond, but a nearby pond as a kid, and felt that sense of solitude and beauty in the world. I thought, well, why can't we use a game to make everyone able to have that experience, you know?
There's some pine cones.
So it can be picked. So for example, if you got hungry, which you're not hungry right now, but you can actually pick these berries and live off the land. In the summer, it's pretty easy to live off the land, but as the seasons pass, things get more difficult, and you go into fall, and maybe the berries stop growing on the hillsides, and as you get into winter, there are no fish. And if you haven't planned ahead, and if you really haven't learned about how to survive in the woods, you will find yourself going home and eating your mother's cooking, right? So yeah, everything has his thoughts associated with it everywhere you go in the world.
And all of the flavor text for each of these, is this taken directly from the book?
Yeah, well, some of it's from his journals, but about 90% of it's from the actual book Walden.
Make sure to give feedback on this game in the survey.
Sorry, I'm so...
twitch.skybound.com, and you can enter for the giveaway that we're going to be giving away later today. What do you think that Thoreau and the Transcendentalists would have thought of video games?
Well, it's a funny thing. People are always like, oh, Thoreau would hate this, you know. But, you know, the truth is Thoreau was an inventor. His family owned a pencil factory, and he had a patent on a better pencil. He invented a better combination of graphite that made a better pencil. He actually had his books published in the most modern book technologies of the time. So he was not a guy who was anti-technology. What he really was a guy who was, we should use things like technologies thoughtfully. We should consider why we're using them. So, you know, I don't know that Thoreau would be an avid video game player, but I think he would be sort of fascinated by this, you know, adaptation.
Well, I feel like, too, one of the themes in Walden is that he's extolling the virtues of reading and literature. And I feel like if there's a game might have something to say, that it could serve that same purpose for inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is Emerson's house, your friend and your mentor.
It's a pretty nice house.
Yeah, he was actually a rich guy. You know, Emerson sort of was the sugar daddy of the Transcendentalists. His first wife, who he loved dearly, died and left him a bunch of money, but he kind of bankrolled a lot of people, including Thoreau. He gave Thoreau odd jobs, and Thoreau actually lived at his house quite a bit.
That was in his cabin. It was his cabin, I believe.
It was his
for Walden.
land. It was his wood lot. So,
Right.
you know, that back then you had to buy some land to chop wood on so that you could heat your house.
Oh.
So it was his wood lot that he had loaned to Thoreau to build his cabin on, yes. Yeah. So here he's asking you to do some work for him to help him with a lecture that he's working on. And he wants you to go get that copy of the Iliad that you apparently borrowed from his library and left sitting out in the forest. You
No,
bum.
why would I do that?
And if you do that, he'll give you some inspiration and help you build back up to that lovely color you started with. So as you get more inspiration, the world actually becomes more lush, filled with color, filled with these sort of story moments, and it becomes, I think, a much more bountiful world, you know.
By that same token, if you go more of the business-minded route, sort of like what
You'll
is
start to,
happening.
things will become a little more dull and gray and have drudgery, you know. You gotta, if you engage in the grind, we all know what that looks like, right? You know.
What's your favorite option line to play through?
Well, I love, there's a whole quest line regarding his sister and their brother who had died before Thoreau went out to the woods. It's actually one of the reasons he went. And his sister knew as much about the woods as he did. And so she lays him a little series of puzzles to find secret places in the woods. And as she's doing that, it's really her way of connecting with him about their brother. Kind of leading him through maybe a reconnection to their family and coming through grief. And I really particularly love that part of it. Yeah. So now you've found the bean field.
field.
Yeah, I have a
It's
bean
a little
field.
late at night to be...
Do you have to go back and rest?
If you
should I
get
be sleeping?
tired, you do have to rest, but you never have to go back and sleep.
There's my beans.
Yeah, so he's making some,
Nice.
making
Nice.
progress in his bean field.
Oh, there's something shiny.
Yeah, that's an arrowhead.
Oh.
I went so far as to slaughter a
Oh
woodchuck
my God.
revenge.
I can't believe you got that one.
Affect his
So-
migrations and turn
This is one of the funniest quotes in the book.
partly for
He
experiments.
actually, he says, we don't know, he says he ate a woodchuck as a part of his experiment. And if you got that quote, we always laugh about that one because it's so over the top that he ate, you know, killed and ate a woodchuck.
I mean, we really don't have any witnesses to what he did out there.
It's just, I can't believe of all the ones you got, that's hilarious.
Oh, there's.
Do
Yeah.
you view the game as something that's like more of a companion piece to Walden, or do you see it as like a standalone?
It will stand alone, and you don't actually have to have read the book to, I think, engage with the ideas. I hope that it would be, you know, everyone has to read Walden in like 12th grade, I think it is, right? It's part of the Common Core standards.
At least in America.
In America, actually, you're exactly right. Very few people outside of America read Thoreau. Civil disobedience, maybe, but not necessarily Walden.
Right.
So I hope that maybe this will be an entry point for students who have to read Walden, that this might bring it to life, you know, give them an opportunity to maybe experience it in from a perspective not of the sort of didactic, you have to learn about the Transcendentalist, but more of look, he was a young guy, it was an adventure, he was essentially camping in the woods outside of his parents' house, you know? I mean, it was fun. He was having some fun, right? He had been through a tragedy. He was a little bit at odds. He didn't know what to do after his brother's death, and he had this mentor, Emerson, who's pressuring him to be a better writer, to do more writing, and there's a lot of things going on, but for him, I think this was partly a sort of joyful adventure setting out and doing something for himself.
And it's funny that you can put the player in his shoes and give them the opportunity to do something completely different that you never would have done.
Exactly. So we didn't want to force the player down the path of having to live the life of Thoreau, right? That would have been it really wouldn't have felt right. So while all of his ideas and his path is there for you, you do not have to do what he did.
So what's the one thing that you hope that players take away from this?
To approach life as something that, your time is precious. Consider how you spend your time. Really, that's the core message of Walden isn't about we all have to go to the woods and live just like Thoreau. The core message is we all have to consider what we're doing with our precious, precious time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with us
Yeah.
and showing you your game. Thank you for
thank
stepping
you.
into Thoreau's
Yeah.
shoes. And thank you so much for helping
thank
me.
Super.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to our content from IndieCade, where we shot the Skybound Insider with a bunch of awesome guests. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of today's game, and subscribe so you can see even more. Thanks. Bye.